The room smelled like roast chicken and lemon polish, the kind of scent that pretends everything is fine. Crystal glasses chimed, forks scraped china, and the air carried that practiced, Sunday warmth families wear like a costume. I watched the glow slide over faces I've known my whole life and felt a chill under my skin, like my chair had been set next to an open window no one else could feel. I'm Maya Bennett, 37, a former retail manager who traded schedules and stock counts for pillboxes and payment plans. 3 years ago, I left my job to care for my mother, Lillian, who battles chronic diabetes. I covered her insulin, kept the house out of delinquency, and never asked for applause. It wasn't charity, it was family, which I believed meant showing up whether or not anyone noticed. At the end of the table, my husband, Marcus, lobbed easy football chatter toward my dad, Harold. The kids giggled at buttered rolls they weren't supposed to squish. Across from me sat my sister, Chloe, with that careful smile that says she knows a secret and wants you to ask for it. I didn't. I just cut my chicken and waited for the familiar lull, the one where someone tells a harmless story and everyone hums along. Harold stood. The scrape of his chair yanked every eye from the plates to his glass, lifted high. "To the real daughter," he said, voice big enough to rattle the chandelier. "The one who's always here for us." He looked straight at Chloe, laughter spilled, hands clapped, my fork pressed moons into the linen. Mom reached into her cardigan pocket and palmed a glint. Platinum, cool as winter light, cradling a single pearl. The necklace. When I was 15, on her bed after a scare at the hospital, she had pressed my hand and promised it to me, a small crown for showing up. Tonight she leaned across the table to Chloe, eyes soft. "You deserve this," she said. The room blurred at the edges the way pictures blur when they're printed wrong. I waited for someone to correct the script, for an aunt to cough and say I'd been the one driving to the ER at midnight, wiring the mortgage, answering every call. No one did. A cousin smiled. An uncle tapped his glass. Chloe's fingers skimmed the pearl like it had been waiting for her all along. I stood. My chair legs grated the floor, a hard sound in a soft room. "We're leaving," I said, even and quiet. Marcus gathered the kids without asking why. The door clicked behind us. Outside, the night air slapped my face awake. "Tell me where you're watching from. Drop a comment and let me know." Because after that toast, I did something I never thought I would, and it changed everything. By the time we pulled into our driveway, the echo of that toast had settled into a clean, cold thought. I put the kids to bed, kissed their foreheads, and stood in the hallway listening to the house exhale. Marcus waited at the kitchen table, hands around a mug he wasn't drinking. He didn't ask for a speech. He didn't need one. I nodded once, and he nodded back, like we were passing a baton we'd both trained to carry. Before sunrise, the house still dark, I slid into the chair by the window with my laptop and a notepad. The bank app opened to our usual dashboard. The transfers I'd set up years ago so my parents never saw a red notice. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, pharmacy. Each line had its own heartbeat. I lined them up in my head like cords plugged into a wall I no longer believed in. Cancel mortgage auto pay. Confirm. Cancel utilities. Confirm. Cancel pharmacy funding. Confirm. The screen asked if I was sure. I was strangely grateful for the question. Yes, I'm sure. My hands shook, not with fear, but with the relief of doing the obvious thing last. I closed the laptop and waited for the guilt to storm in. It didn't. The quiet was real. When the kids woke, breakfast felt normal on purpose. Cereal, a banana, 2 backpacks zipped. Marcus brushed my shoulder as he left for work. I washed a cup and watched the sink clear, the water running clean and then stopping. That was the metaphor, and I didn't push it away. I let it stand. 2 days later, my phone rang just after noon. "Dad." I stepped onto the back porch where the air smelled like cut grass and neighbor charcoal. Maya, he said, voice tight like he was jogging. The bank called. The mortgage is late. What happened? I turned off the transfers, I said. I'm not paying it anymore. A beat of silence. You can't do this to us. He tried for authority, but it came out like a plea. You've always handled it. You know your mother's situation. I do, I said. I handled it because I thought we were a team. You raised a glass to the person who would take care of you. She lives 10 minutes away. Let her. He sputtered, said my name again as if saying it louder would make the years of bills rewind. I told him I had to go and ended the call before he found the words that would aim straight at my soft places. That evening, Mom called. She skipped hello. How could you let this happen? Her voice was sharp and bright, the voice she used on nurses who forgot a chart. They're threatening fees in the house. Maya, you know I'm sick. I do, I said. I also know what I've paid for and how long. I'm done. This is not you, she said, like she was diagnosing a stranger. Your sister has been here. She deserves... I'm not arguing about necklaces, I said. I'm talking about money, time, and respect. Her breath crackled. You're punishing us for one moment. It wasn't one moment, I said. It was the truth you chose in public. I heard you. Now hear me. I'm not your bank account anymore. Silence. Then the tiny click of a line going dead. I stood at the sink again, palms on the counter, and felt the tremor run out of my arms. The month turned itself like a page. No more scheduled debits, no more late-night pharmacy runs on my card. The safety net I'd stretched under their lives was rolled up and stored. Whether they noticed the work or not, they would notice its absence. On the third morning, a text from the bank confirmed what I already knew. The automatic systems were officially paused. I set the phone down and breathed. For the first time in years, I wasn't running toward a problem I didn't create. The house was quiet. Somewhere across town, another house wasn't. Word travels fast in families that pretend not to gossip. By the next week, Chloe had moved into my parents' house with 2 suitcases and a speech about being there that played well on the porch. A neighbor texted Marcus, said she'd seen Chloe on the steps with a clipboard like a cruise director. Inside, she started calling herself house manager, rearranged pill bottles into neat little pyramids, and set my father's mail in a tray she labeled urgent. If you don't look too closely, performance looks like help. She posted a photo of Mom's kitchen on her feed, clean counters, a new bouquet, the necklace glinting at her throat, and tagged it family first. I scrolled past it, closed the app, and stared at the blank of my screen until my reflection came back to me. Family first is a nice idea. It just depends on who you mean by family. The first real sign came from my Aunt May, who prefers complaining to asking. She called Marcus, not me, to say Chloe had stepped up and that we could all learn something about gratitude. I recognized the tactic, praise the newcomer to punish the one who used to show up. Marcus hummed, said thanks for the update, and told me later with that careful calm he saves for when he knows I'm already carrying enough. 2 days after that, Nate texted. He works adjacent to bank filings and sometimes sees things he wishes he hadn't. Heads up, saw a delinquency notice on your parents' mortgage, he wrote. Looks bad. He didn't add the rest, but he didn't have to. If Chloe had it handled, nothing would be late. If she didn't, the first thing to hit the ground would be the bill I used to catch. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and the number I still had for the mortgage department. When you've been the one paying, you know which buttons get you to a person. The rep confirmed my name and old authorization. We're 2 months behind, she said, voice careful. Late fees are accruing. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What about the card on file for pharmacy and incidentals? Is that still active? She paused like she could see a boundary from her side of the screen. I can't give details without your mother's consent, she said, but there has been recent activity. Okay, I said, thank you. I clicked out and sat there, palms flat to the wood, the same way I'd stood at that dinner table. Chloe's income has always been a collage, part-time boutique shifts, online jewelry sales that seem to bloom and wilt every season. She liked shine, not invoices. Now she had keys to accounts and a stage to stand on. The math didn't work unless someone else was paying for the set. That night, my mother left a voicemail. Her tone was syrupy, the kind she used when she wanted favors from nurses. "Honey, your sister is settling in beautifully. The house feels so peaceful, don't be a stranger." She didn't mention the mortgage, she didn't mention late fees, she didn't mention that I'd been the reason the lights stayed on for so long. I played it twice and saved it, because sometimes words are more honest than the people speaking them. On Saturday, I drove past their street and didn't turn in. The porch light was on, though the sun was high. The mailbox leaned like it had been hit too many times and never truly fixed. A delivery van idled at the curb. The driver carried a box big enough for a small appliance to the door. Chloe signed with a flourish. My phone buzzed again. Nate. Same thread. A second message. "You okay?" I typed back. "I will be." Then I put the phone face down and let the silence choose me. Something was off, not the loud kind. The off you hear when an engine still runs but a belt has slipped. You can ignore it for a while. Then the smoke shows up and pretends to be news. I wasn't going to wait for smoke. I wanted the cause. I wanted the line where performance ended and the bill began. I poured a glass of water and watched the surface settle. I'd spent years fixing things no one admitted were broken. This time I wasn't rushing in with a wrench. I was going to find out what exactly Chloe was tightening and what she was letting fall. I started with what I could prove. At my dining table, the same one we bought secondhand when the kids were small, I pulled out the plastic tub where I'd kept every big receipt and statement from the last 3 years. Hospital invoices with itemized insulin, mortgage confirmation stamped paid, the property tax stub from the winter the pipes burst. I lined them in piles by year and taped a sheet of printer paper to the wall. Dates down the left, amounts to the right, little notes in the margin. ER visit, principal paydown, pharmacy run, winter bill. It looked like a patient chart, which felt right. Families have vitals, too. I opened my email and dug through old threads with Mom, the ones where she'd texted me photos of balances and I'd answered with screenshots of transfers. I saved each attachment in a folder named Bennett House. Proof, and watched the list grow until it needed subfolders: mortgage, medical, utilities, property taxes. It was boring in the way truth usually is, but it stacked. My phone buzzed. "Priya. We've been friends since high school, the kind who can hear how tired you are just from a hello." She didn't bother with one. "Check your email," she said. "Sent you something." I refreshed. There they were, e-receipts forwarded from a mutual friend who worked at the bank and knew where the lines were and how to nudge them without breaking anything. Target, $800. Nordstrom, $1,200 for a handbag. Airline and hotel for a weekend in Orlando, $2,500. All charged to my mother's card in the 2 weeks since Chloe moved in. Mom hasn't been to a mall in years. She doesn't travel without a doctor's note. I scrolled through the receipts again to make sure my eyes weren't inventing a story. They weren't. Item names blurred into the same message. Someone was shopping like the world owed her a prize for showing up. I forwarded the emails to my own account, to a folder named Evidence, and backed them up on a drive I kept for school photos and tax returns. Then I saved them again, because I've learned that the things you think you'll never lose are the first to vanish when you need them. That afternoon, my phone lit with an unknown number I recognized from old paperwork. "Ms. Bennett?" The voice was clipped, professional. "This is Albright. We worked together when you set up your mother's medical directives." I stepped into the hallway. "Yes." "I thought you should know," she said. "Your parents reached out to update their arrangements. They want to remove you as co-signer on certain accounts and reassign power of attorney." To Chloe. A pause. "That is their request." In my head, the printer paper timeline jerked forward like a film frame sticking in the gate. First the toast, then the move-in, now the keys. "Thank you for telling me," I said. I can't advise you, Ms. Albright said carefully, but documentation matters. I have it, I said. I'll keep building. After we hung up, I sat with my laptop and let the new shape of the problem stand. This wasn't just about a necklace or even a mortgage bill. It was the kind of slow rewrite that happens when someone decides history is whatever they can convince other people to sign. If they cut me out on paper, the years of paying would shrink to a rumor. I opened the Bennett house, proof folder, and added a new file. Ownership. I scanned the notarized agreement from 2019 where I'd paid down a chunk of the principal in exchange for a 30% stake, the kind you put in writing so no one forgets the math later. I took photos of the original signatures and saved a copy in the cloud, then printed 2 sets and slid them into sheet protectors because I am the kind of woman who uses sheet protectors when the stakes are high. By evening, the dining room looked like a case without the detectives. Marcus came home, took one look, and set dinner on the stove to keep warm without a word. I showed him the receipts, the voicemail transcription from Mom, the note from Ms. Albright. He listened, then moved the kids' crayons off the table so they wouldn't roll onto my stacks. "Do you want to do this alone?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I need to do it right." He nodded. "Then let's be exact." I made a second timeline, this one only for the last month. Toast night, transfer cancellations, Dad's call, Mom's call, Chloe's move-in, delinquency notice, purchases, estate planner alert. The list didn't scream. It just pointed in one direction. My phone buzzed again. Priya, another forward, a spa day, a jewelry store in Buckhead, a pair of noise-canceling headphones that cost more than my first car payment. The timestamps overlapped with the hours Chloe had posted her family first photo from the kitchen where I'd learned to make gumbo. "Okay," I said out loud to no one, or to the room. "Okay." I scrolled to a contact I hadn't used since a friend's custody case 2 years ago. Dana Knox, attorney. My thumb hovered and then pressed call. When she picked up, I didn't try to make it pretty. "I need counsel," I said. "I have documents, and I have a sister spending my mother's money." "Start by sending what you have," she said. "We'll talk tomorrow." "And Maya?" "Yes?" "Keep everything." Dana's office sat on the 4th floor of a brick building that used to be a mill. Exposed beams, glass walls, no clutter. She shook my hand, took the accordion folder I'd stuffed with copies, and listened like a metronome, steady and exact. I laid out the timeline, the receipts, the voicemail, the 2019 notarized agreement for my 30% stake. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she tapped her pen once. "Good," she said. "Now understand something. People who get caught spending money that isn't theirs don't apologize first. They attack." She was right, and the proof landed 2 days later. A courier knocked just after lunch and handed me a thick envelope with my name spelled correctly in bold black. Inside, a complaint filed by Chloe Lynn Bennett against Maya Elise Bennett, alleging undue influence and coercion over a vulnerable mother, seeking to void purported ownership interests in the house. The words were familiar in the way lies often are. They borrow your language and rearrange it until you barely recognize your own life. I called Dana. "It came." "Good," she said again, calm like a pilot. "Forward a scan. We'll answer. We'll counter." That afternoon, I sat at my dining table under the taped timelines while the scan bar crawled across each page. Dana called back within the hour. "Here's our posture," she said. 1. We file an answer denying her allegations. 2. We attach your notarized agreement and payment records. 3. We move for a temporary order preventing any changes to account ownership or property title while this is pending. 4. We request a forensic accounting of your mother's accounts from the date Chloe moved in. Do we have enough for that? You have receipts, timestamps, and a pattern, she said. Courts like patterns. We'll also send preservation letters to the bank, credit card companies, and your parents' internet provider. No one deletes anything. I exhaled. Okay. Separate instruction, she added. Stop talking to your parents about substance. No texts about money. If they call, be courteous and brief. Let counsel handle the rest. I agreed. When we hung up, I opened my email. Dana had already sent a secure link. I uploaded the ownership agreement, bank transfers, the photo of my 2019 cashier's check, and the new receipts Priya had forwarded. I added the estate planner's call log, the voicemail transcription from Mom, and the screenshot of Chloe's family first post for time corroboration. It felt absurd to file a screenshot of a necklace selfie next to a notarized agreement, but that's how real stories look when you flatten them for people who don't know you. By evening, Dana sent drafts. Our answer? A counterclaim for declaratory judgment recognizing my 30% interest, and a motion for a temporary restraining order on asset changes. I read every line, corrected one misspelling, and signed where she flagged. The next morning, service went the other way. Chloe texted me, "We don't have to do this. Let's handle it like family." Then, 10 minutes later, "You forced Mom when she was weak. This ends now." The contradiction sat there, back to back, like twin billboards facing different highways. I didn't reply. I forwarded the messages to Dana. "Classic," Dana wrote. "Save them." By week's end, the judge granted a short-term order, no changes to account owners, beneficiaries, or title until the first hearing. Dana smiled when she told me, then turned to the next step. "I'm retaining a forensic accountant," she said. "Name is Ruiz. He'll request statements, card logs, ATM footage where available. We'll subpoena records if necessary." "Won't my parents fight that?" "They can," she said. "But once litigation starts, money leaves footprints. We follow them." That night, the house was quiet except for the printer spitting out another set of labeled folders. Pleadings, evidence, communications. Marcus put a plate beside me and kissed my temple. I ate 3 bites, then checked my email again. A new message from Dana. Litigation hold letters sent, requests drafted. Ruiz looped in. Expect contact. I set the phone down and let the quiet expand. Outside, the streetlights flicked on. Somewhere across town, Chloe was curating a version of events that photographed well. I wasn't curating, I was preparing. When Mr. Ruiz called the next morning, his voice was brisk, professional. "Ms. Bennett, I'll need account numbers you have, dates you recall, and any screenshots showing balances before and after your sister moved in." "I have them," I said. "I'll send everything." "Good," he said. "Then we start." Mr. Ruiz moved fast. He sent me a tight list of what he needed, and I answered with account numbers, dates, screenshots, everything I had since the day Chloe rolled her suitcases onto my parents' porch. Within 2 weeks, he called back with a voice that didn't waste a syllable. "We're done," he said. 2 months. 14,000 in withdrawals and purchases tied to your sister's use. Designer clothing at Nordstrom, electronics at Best Buy, a weekend in Orlando, spa services, dining. I'll send the report and source documents in an hour. The PDF landed with tabs like chapters. Line items, timestamps, merchant codes, even ATM camera stills from a Buckhead branch. Chloe in a cropped jacket, looking up at the screen, withdrawing cash from my mother's account. I forwarded the package to Dana and set my palms on the desk to steady the tremor that came after relief. Dana replied, "Perfect. We'll mark these and file. Be ready for hearing." The courtroom was colder than I expected, the kind of cold that makes paper feel slick. I sat beside Dana, hands folded, eyes on the judge's bench. Across the aisle, Chloe wore a pressed blazer and a calm face that I remembered from childhood show and tells where she held something shiny and talked like it belonged to her. Chloe's attorney went first. "Your Honor," he began, smooth as a radio anchor, "this is a family matter. My client acted with her mother's blessing. Any funds used were gifts, expressions of love and gratitude for the daughter who has been present. He said present like it was a password. I watched the judge take notes without looking up. Dana stood. No throat clearing, no padding. Your Honor, we agree on one point. Facts matter. She handed the clerk a binder. Plaintiff's audit exhibit, prepared by a forensic accountant, Mr. Ruiz, showing $14,000 in withdrawals and purchases from Ms. Lillian Bennett's accounts in the 2 months since Ms. Chloe Bennett moved in. Itemized, time-stamped, and tied to card numbers and ATM footage. She clicked a remote. On the screen, stills from the ATM camera filled the space between us and the judge. Chloe's profile, the angle of her wrist, the cash tray sliding open. Dana didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. This is not the pattern of caregiving, she said. This is exploitation. Next, the clerk played a voicemail I'd saved from years ago. My mother thanking me for paying a hospital bill. You're my lifeline, Mom's voice said, thinner than I remembered. The room was quiet in that full way, when everyone hears the same sentence the same way. Dana stacked the rest like she was laying bricks. My 2019 notarized agreement reflecting a 30% ownership interest in the house for a principal paydown. Bank transfers over time with memo lines that read mortgage and pharmacy, the estate planner's log noting my parents' attempt to remove me as co-signer and power of attorney after Chloe moved in, screenshots of Chloe's family first post matched to timestamps of purchases. Chloe's attorney tried to pull it back. Even if funds moved, he said, Ms. Lillian Bennett is competent and generous. She chose to reward a daughter who has been there. Dana didn't look at him. Gifts don't require ATM cameras, she said, and generosity doesn't usually come with a Nordstrom receipt the same week a mortgage goes delinquent. The judge asked 3 questions. Each one was small and precise. Dates, authority, documentation. Ruiz answered from the gallery when asked, steady as a ledger. I kept my face straight and my breath even and watched the judge's pen stop moving. When she spoke, her voice had no frosting. The evidence is clear, she said. The court finds that Ms. Chloe Bennett misused Ms. Lillian Bennett's funds without consent. The court orders repayment of $17,000, inclusive of interest and costs, within 60 days. Further, no changes to account ownership, beneficiaries, or property title shall occur absent court approval while this matter is pending. Defendant's ownership interest, supported by the 2019 agreement and payment records, is recognized for purposes of these proceedings. Paper rustled. Someone coughed into a sleeve. I looked at Chloe. The calm face held, but her knuckles were bloodless on the table's edge. Behind her, my parents sat close together. Mom stared at the floor. Dad looked past me at a spot on the back wall. They didn't meet my eyes. Dana squeezed my elbow under the table. Breathe, she whispered. I did. The air felt different, thinner, cleaner. The order would be reduced to typed lines with a seal and a date, but right then it was a simple sentence in my head. We told the truth, and it held. The order arrived in the mail 3 days later. The seal, the date, the lines that made what happened in court official. Dana called it a win and moved us to the next square without celebrating. We use the ruling and your 30%, she said. We secure the house before anyone tries a new trick. She drafted a demand letter first, attaching my 2019 agreement and the judgment. Then she prepared a formal notice to my parents, advising that I was exercising my rights and taking control of disposition. The language was plain and careful. When I signed, my hand didn't shake. Marcus and I drove the packet to the courier together. On the way back, traffic crawled and the radio filled the car with songs from the year we met. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt like a bridge we had to cross, not a room we had to fill. 48 hours after service, Chloe texted, "Wow, really?" I didn't answer. A neighbor told Marcus she saw Chloe load 2 suitcases into a rideshare that evening, the same way she'd arrived, quick, performative, already facing the next door. She left the porch light on. Dana filed the notice to vacate, 45 days, as the law allows. We posted and mailed it, then waited. My parents didn't call. A week later, a letter came from a rental complex on the edge of town with my mother's name on the lease. Another week, a charity pickup truck hauled away the sofa I grew up on. The porch went bare. The curtains stayed open because no one remembered to close them. I drove past once and parked across the street. The grass had gone shaggy around the mailbox that never stood quite straight. The magnolia tree still held its leaves like it had something to prove. For a moment, I pictured walking up the steps, knocking, and asking if they wanted help packing. Then I pictured the toast, the necklace, the silence in the courtroom when I needed them most. I put the car back in drive. At home, the kids were sprawled on the rug with homework, and Marcus had left a plate warming in the oven. He asked how I was. I said tired, and meant more than that. He didn't press. We folded laundry on the bed and talked about field trips and a birthday party and whether the dog needed a new collar. Ordinary talk, the kind I'd fought to make room for. When the 45th day came, Dana met me at the house with a locksmith and a camera. The rooms echoed in a way they never had before. The wall where our height marks used to be had been scrubbed clean. I stood in the foyer and let the emptiness settle. No shouting, no ceremony, just space where a life used to be. Outside, Dana handed me the new keys. "Clean exit," she said. "Clean," I echoed. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like washing a wound. I listed the house the following week. Dana sent me a referral for a no-drama agent who knew how to price a place with good bones and a tired story. Photos went up, the magnolia catching light. The brick steps scrubbed, empty rooms that made their own arguments, showing stacked over a weekend, and by Monday we had 3 offers. I chose the cleanest one, solid financing, short contingencies, a couple who talked about where their kids might build forts instead of how fast they could flip the kitchen. At closing, the conference room smelled like toner and coffee. I signed my name until it looked like a shape more than a word. The deed slid across the table, the wire confirmation hit, and the number landed the way numbers do when they stop being estimates, a little over 300,000. I sat there with my palms flat to the laminate, breathing while the escrow officer stapled packets into tidy stacks. When we walked out, the sun felt indifferent and perfect. Back home, I opened a new account and named it for my children. I moved most of the proceeds there and set automatic contributions. College, a head start I'd once hoped my parents would help lay. The rest swept across our life like a soft broom. We paid off the car, erased a lingering medical balance from the year our son needed stitches, set aside a cushion that didn't make noise when you touched it. No shopping spree, no victory trip, just room to breathe. We found a smaller place on the other side of town with a square backyard and a kitchen that faced the afternoon light. Marcus built 2 raised beds for tomatoes and herbs. The kids claimed a corner for a chalk city and drew streets that looped into themselves until they ran out of space. On move-in day, I hung nothing on my neck. The old necklace lived where it had lived for years, in a promise that wasn't kept. My parents didn't call. A neighbor mentioned they'd settled into an apartment near the bus line, that someone had seen my mother on a bench with a paperback. I let the image float and pass. Not every picture needs a caption. One evening after the boxes were gone, I stood at the sink and watched the water run clear and then stop. The house hummed low and even, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask for anything. Marcus set 2 bowls on the counter and touched my shoulder. The kids shouted from the yard about a perfect hopscotch jump. I stepped onto the porch and listened. I used to think respect was something handed down, an heirloom you earned by being good and patient. Turns out it's something you build, document by document, boundary by boundary, until it can stand on its own weight. The door behind me was shut, the gate ahead was open, and for the first time in a long time, the future felt like a place I didn't owe anyone to enter.